Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ToughLift Podcast. All right, so we took a quick break there. I need a breather. I've been pumping these things out. This is episode 24. With us today is a cool guest. Like I said, I wanted to bring on guests that are not necessarily weightlifters or in the weightlifting world. This is Dr. Geffrey Colon. This is one of my old professors from Eastern Michigan. Yes, I went to college. What a shocker. The professor here and doctor is a professor at Eastern and Schoolcraft here local to Livonia, Michigan, in sports psychology, motor learning, motor development, and has a background and degree in kinesiology. And I wanted to bring him on today because I think one of the things that would be really beneficial to the listeners and athletes that I coach, and even my own coaches, is talking about how athletes actually learn. And even some of you coaches out there, I think it will be beneficial because I know I found it really beneficial learning from like the ground up and discussing how people actually learn from like a cellular level and what's actually going on. And as an athlete, if you can understand how you learn from the base level up, it might actually help you kind of understand more what's going on, which will ebb and flow into you just getting the trick of things quicker, whether you're a weightlifter or a polo player. So, let's knock it out. Colon, let's do an intro, man. Who are you?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. And I want to say that I have had the pleasure, because that's how I connect to it, with my students, of having had Coach Matt Adamczyk in my class. Goodness, it's over 10 years ago now. We're right around that time frame.
Yeah, hot second.
It has been a hot second, but so overall, I have, I'm still, I'm actually still what I'm at the level of what I would say I'm a master's athlete. So a lot of what I have learned and knowledge base that I have, I tend to apply for myself. And with the work that I do, with the sports psychology area of my expertise, I tend to really bring in a lot of connections with athletes in relationship to the process of learning new skills, the process of refining, as well as what's happening during the training phases that we go through in order to essentially become automatic in a skill without having to think about it. So it's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to our basically to our discourse and our chat today.
Thank you. And thanks for your time too. I kind of reached out to you out of the blue. So that was probably out of a random occurrence, but I figured, I connected with you the way you taught. I really enjoyed. And we'll go over the one topic that has always stuck with me. And I think any student that's ever had you, it's always stuck with them. The muscle memory conversation. So we'll get down and dirty on that one. But so I figured you would be a good, person to bring on and talk about that. So I definitely wanted to reach out, even had been 10 years. But for the record, one, I was a good student. Let's just put that one out there for everyone that will be talking trash. I was a good student.
I will confirm on that. I will confirm that.
But almost to the point to where I was probably just, because I was a coach, I was probably too eager and sometimes forced the class too far into the depths of things. Forcing topics that we're not really needing to go too deep in.
However, I always welcome those in-depth level of conversations. Sometimes I have to cut them a little bit shorter than I would like just because of time constraints and covering content. Yet that's actually one of the aspects of self-reward that I have in teaching. It's when I can get into a level of engagement to really put reality of practice, reality of competition, training, in relationship to textbook topics that are sort of just out there in the magical world of abstract knowledge to a certain extent. And that's something that to me is really important, and you were definitely an asset in a positive way to all of my classes and lectures. So,
and then on the other end, I was a pain in the ass because I was traveling with my athlete a lot during that time. So I was also gone every 2 weeks. So I know I was a pain in the ass in that aspect as well. So Thank you for being patient with me.
No, we made it work.
And then just so everyone listening, what is your own sports background? And I know you played golf You were always talking about golf,
Yep.
and I assume you still do.
I certainly do.
And what is your own sports background growing up, and then what kind of led you down? For any of the people listening that are maybe looking at the kines background, my own coach Tracy that works with me, her background is kines. I was gonna go that route, decided to be broke my whole life, so I went coach route. But what led you down the route you went?
So I've actually, I'll start with this. I am a vertically challenged basketball player.
So look how much taller you are on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, so
I didn't
I
have to
look
believe it.
taller than you, right? I just got a cushion for me to sit on and make myself taller while I sit. But just obviously Matt knows how I am vertically challenged, but I'm a good old 5'5", 5'6" with the tennis shoes. And essentially, basketball is my first sport. I actually started playing organized basketball when I was 7 years old. And I still continue to play to this day with the goal, actually, of when I retire, going to Puerto Rico and actually playing in Masters level tournaments by age groups. And that's that to me is a huge goal right there, still in the present. Over the years, however, I'm consider myself to be a multi-sport athlete. In high school, I ran track as well as cross country, while basketball was still the main focus. Throughout that, I moved on in college I actually did quite a bit of weight training, and I still do. So that's still part of my fitness routine. I have played volleyball. Golf is a huge part of my life in the present still. Well, I shouldn't say still because I picked it up like 20 years ago. And a lot of fitness and conditioning type of programs that I've been a part of. And I can go down the line. And one of the other ones that I always like to mention is essentially surfing. Being a bodyboarder and really, doing surf trips, Costa Rica, Hawaii. And
I didn't know you did that.
Oh, yeah. That's actually a huge, huge part of my sports connection to crossing or multi-sport, if you want to think of it that way, which means that I can swim, obviously.
Yeah.
So that is still sometimes if I'm going to go on a bodyboarding trip, I for sure will be swimming a month to 2 months prior to that trip from a training standpoint. So in general, just continuing to be an athlete even to this day, and going through the highs and lows of all of it. Golf has put quite a bit of humility for me. I should also mention racket sports. So even though I had not gotten into the pickleball craze, it's the best way for me to say that. I keep saying, yeah, I will play. It's just not right now. However, on the other hand, very avid racquetball player over the years. So playing singles as well as doubles, and continuing, to just put myself across a number of different sports. So that would be my, in a quick synopsis, my life.
Sporting resume.
Yeah, the lifespan of athletics for me. So, in a parentheses, I had a walk-on tryout for University of Arizona out of high school, but my parents were flipping the bill for school, and from Puerto Rico, which is where I'm originally from, to Arizona, was just a little too expensive for my parents to be flying me back and forth, so I chose to go to Rutgers. So my education is an undergraduate degree from Rutgers University. It's in psychology and sports psychology. And then actually worked as a coach, worked as a parapro in the special ed department of a Army high school, actually. So that's why I had a lot of understanding, not to mention family, with regards to your background.
Yeah.
And then basically from that, I basically went to Michigan State for a master's degree. And that master's degree in sports psychology and counseling, which allows me to work with the athletes in the present as a sports psychologist. And then my PhD was actually a combination of motor behavior, as you mentioned, Matt, motor control, motor learning, motor development, and still sports psychology as my secondary area. So that led me to Eastern and to cross paths with you, essentially. So,
Busy guy.
and here we are.
Yeah, busy guy. Damn. Yeah. So anyone listening can tell why I probably gravitated towards you and, wanted to bring you on the show. So, yeah, definitely, multifunctional. I'll say that. You're all over the board on lots of different sports. That's cool, though. And definitely gives hope to, I think, anybody that, and a little sidetracking, but this mentality of like you turn 30 and start dying.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Very annoying mentality.
Yes.
Fucking infuriates me. Like, I joke around that I'm old, but like I still I look and I'm like 36 years old. I'm like, I'm young, dude. I have so much I still can get done, and I'm not even getting started.
You know how I said masters level athlete competition?
Yeah.
So I'm targeting basically to compete in a 65 to 70 bracket for masters level international competition.
Yeah.
By the time I retire, which is obviously I just gave my age of I'm going to be 62 this summer, and there are people that are literally telling me, it's like, you're still playing basketball, and it's like, yeah, I'm still playing basketball.
Well, me and you were more or less harassed by the class on ageism, so they could not guess either of our ages.
Correct.
To this day, people can't guess, and guess about 15 to 10 years heavy on me. So, at least for you, they're guessing much younger.
That's usually the norm.
At some points, I feel like they guessed that we were the same age, which felt real shitty.
Yeah.
But again, so I brought you on because I think a lot of the times athletes don't actually know why or how they're learning.
Yes.
And I think whether, again, this is it's called ToughLift Podcast. It's obviously like its core, right? The why is the weightlifting stuff. But I think anyone should be able to pick this podcast up and learn something as an athlete or as a coach in sporting. So this episode, like down and dirty, is for the athletes and the coaches of sports. And whether they're track and field, they're polo, they're weightlifting, the why and how they're learning, I think, needs to be described more, because I think a lot of the times it just comes to like the first stage of like show up, go do it, go to bed, show up, go do it, go to bed, and like it never evolves from there. And then a lot of frustration occurs because they are not like going to the next level, either like cognitively, or they are not putting the extra steps in as adults to like be thinking on a higher level of like, okay, what do I need to be doing here? But they're also not understanding, even at a base level, like, what is my body doing here? What am I actually learning? Like, how is my body learning? How are these things actually happening? Like, how in a year did I learn to get the bar over my head? Right. When like a year ago I was fucking terrified of it. By the way, you can curse on this podcast. No one will come after you. I'll redact your eyes so educational formats will come after you. So like I think if we go over kind of like, okay, you just started weightlifting. We're going to talk about like the motor learning process to start, and then we'll kind of feed off that. I think that'll be helpful for a lot of people. Just learning, like, let's go over the 3 motor learning stages.
Okay. And actually, in a very relevant format, I've taught weight training classes, and I'm currently teaching a weight training class with undergraduate students, general population also, by the way. So some of them have been athletes, some of them, this is the first time they're picking up, anything to do with weight training. So, but so let's establish first experience, non-experience in regards to a particular skill. If you're hearing the word skill, I'm making a reference to having to learn something physically. And if it's a skill, it means you have to have practice time, and it also means you have to have some level of instruction. In some instances, there may not be any instruction, but then we can also get into why the person may get stuck into not a high level of progression in the skill performance aspect of it. So if we have no experience and we are now going to be taught a new skill, what the individual is going to do is immediately try to draw back to what are the similarities to this new skill that I have to what I have done in the past before you can really get into the nuances and the fundamental techniques of that particular new skill. Example, so I had never wakeboard in my life, okay, but I essentially was like, that's something that I want to learn how to do. So the day I went to take the lesson, oh, by the way, before I went to take a lesson, I spent easily about an hour trying to get up, basically being pulled by the boat and not being successful. Okay, didn't have one little piece of fundamental movement technique to actually get out. Right. So, but anyways, the instructor says to me, "Tell me what you've done in the past that deals with balance." And I said, "Well, let's see. I've surfed, I've skateboarded, I've windsurfed, and I snowboard." As soon as I finished with those 4 examples of skills or activities that I have done before that require dynamic balance, he immediately said, "I'm going to have you out of the water and wakeboarding here in like 15 minutes. So, and sure enough, his one technique instruction that he gave me, it got me out of the water on the first try. So, and then from there, it was just now I have that dynamic balance aspect. I know where the board is supposed to be. I know I have to be edging. And consequently, I was able to ride and wakeboard. But the first thing we do when we're learning a skill is actually we have to think about it. And so that is referred to as a beginning stage or a cognitive stage, where the predominant brain function that's taking place is thinking about how to do the skill. You do connect past experiences that are similar into that learning experience, and you're going to have a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors, and you're actually not going to look smooth either. So your movements are going to be some at times maybe look clumsy, at times may look like you're not coordinated, but it really is a function of coordinating all the muscle groups to be able to get to that fundamental movement technique. Once we get through a high number of trials to establish the fundamental movement skill technique, we progress into intermediate stage. Associative stage is the scholarly term, and at that point, we are very much so increasing in consistency of good performance, but we still need instruction. We still need feedback from a coach, from a teacher. You're starting to recognize how to fix mistakes as well. In the beginning stage, you do not know what you're doing wrong, so you have to have that outside source give you information. Ultimately, we want to progress to being on automatic, being advanced. And this is where, man, we've had that long conversation in class about the 1,000 repetitions to the 10,000 repetitions. And what that indicates is that in order for the skill that you're learning to be automatic, you need 1,000 good repetitions. Right? That's the key, good repetition.
Yep.
Because if you're practicing a skill incorrectly, what's going to be cemented in your motor memory, basically, within your brain, is that wrong skill movement. And that becomes your movement, essentially, even though it's incorrect, right? And I'll actually be able to touch on that shortly as well. So for me to get to 1,000 repetitions of correct fundamental movement pattern, I may need, this is going to vary according to the individual, but I may need 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 repetitions with corrections to achieve and move forward into that essentially good fundamental movement pattern. Once you continue to go through the years with the skill that you're learning, you essentially then you will get to, the 10,000 repetitions. That equates to the 10,000 hours. So there's a lot of talk about the 10,000 hours for expertise. It's the same actually with regards to motor movement. Now, the individual differences part is going to influence quite a bit with relationship to who's, how do you get to that 1,000?
I think a lot of people, just to interject that, I think a lot of people don't understand that aspect, especially nowadays because of this thing. This is breaking the concept that everybody is different on that. And I deal with it a lot in weightlifting, and you coach a lot of other sports and athletes and have kids that have played sports and stuff. Like, they see so-and-so accelerating or learning at a different rate, or even like their peers, and they're like, I've been doing it longer than them, or they just started, why are they at blank, blank, blank? And it's like, dude, it's different for everyone. And they're like,
yes,
no, I'm learning it wrong, or blah. They try to find excuses, and they just don't understand that it literally is different for everyone, and they can't accept that.
I'm glad you brought up the immediate reward system that we currently have with, whether it's Google, whether it is the phone, but also think of it this way. I, for example, grew up with essentially our first video game was Pong. If you it's like, how long can you actually play Pong as a kid? We never lasted more than 30 minutes, and then we were out. We were out again, we were out, and we're going to go play. Whereas kids today, they go to GameStop, for example, they rent a game, and, they get it on Friday, they hammer it out Friday, Saturday, and by Sunday, they may have achieved all the levels that they have, that game has available, essentially. So that's a very quick return on investment of time. And what I talk about is, if you've been doing this for a long time, once you figure out the game, this part you don't have to worry about. That's automatic. Now you're just configuring how the brain is basically figuring out the video game. So from the aspect of sports, it's definitely very similar from the standpoint that time invested, if it's a basically video game control, right? It's the same to what you have to do with regards to the physical skill. And yes, I have encountered gymnasts, figure skaters, tennis players that, we talk about specific skills, and they're like, I should be able to do this. And I'm like, well, absolutely, you should be able to do this.
That phrase eats coaches
right?
alive.
How often do you hear that?
So should I, bud.
Yeah. I should be able to do it.
Time is not a variable that basically dictates whether you should be level X, Y, or Z. Like, time is not the variable, because you can train. There are athletes that train their whole lives and they never did it.
Right.
It's
yeah. So when we get down to it, it still is an investment of time, and so the aspect of being resilient and persistent in relationship to getting to those 1,000, to getting to the 10,000, it just takes a lot of time, and you have to be willing to invest that time in practice, and this is where we'll continue to joke, because we do have to talk about practice, not the game, practice, and that's the best Allen Iverson quote that I can ever, I will never let that one go, because it is about practice,
and I use it at the gym. I've used that at the gym. Yeah. Since you showed it to me, man, I use that one.
Yep, it's about practice, and we have to practice the correct movement technique in order to really get there. So let me go back to the motor memory part real quick. Okay, so, and again, this is another source of discussion in class that once I bring it up, you already know where I'm going with it, but everybody talks about muscle memory, and it's like, well, and my question always to the class is, oh, okay, so do you have a brain in your quadricep muscle? And everybody's always like, well, no. I said, so do we really have muscle memory? And the truth of the matter is, and this is going to be a dichotomy now because I'm actually going to come back and say that there is some muscle memory within the muscles, but we'll get to that here shortly. But the truth of the matter is that we're accumulating movement experiences within the brain. The brain is storing those movement experiences in the motor memory. And once that skill has been learned, essentially the brain is able to recall that, send it down from the brain to the muscles, and the muscles will be able to respond to that command and execute the particular skill, that whatever that skill may be. We talked about, okay, does everybody know how to ride a bicycle? Yes, everybody knows how to ride a bicycle. How long has it been since you've ridden a bicycle? 3, 5, 7 years. Can you get up on the bicycle and ride it? And everybody says yes. That's your motor memory, okay? But the one thing that has been discovered, which is actually quite interesting to me, actually, from the standpoint of actual muscle memory, is that there is the training that the muscle fibers for the muscle groups connected to a skill, because of being over those 1,000 repetitions to the 10,000, those muscle fibers actually do respond to that skill once the skill is engaged from the brain. And what has been determined and proven is that even skills that have not been practiced for a long time, once they get re-engaged, the muscle fibers actually pick up right away and they're able to get into that. So there's a lot of discussion as to whether a former weight training individual can actually not recover, but actually, so let's say I left and I have not weight trained for 5 years, and now I re-engage in weight training. So my contention is that my muscle fibers are going to be able to pick up quicker because I was a weight trainer in the past. And also, my muscles are also going to respond and actually start to get toned, start to have some level of muscle size increase. Even, it depends on what you're training for, but your body is going to respond to that quicker. Yeah. And that's a function of the motor memory that's, I'm saying motor memory in parentheses, but the motor memory that is actually within the muscle fibers to that skill. Yeah. However, all of it is still geared by the brain. So that
I feel like a good study group for that would be especially in our sport. I mean, all sports, but we see that a lot with women that are elite, top level females that are lifters, and then they have a kid, they stop lifting 3-4 years for one quad, and then they come back, and they're right back on top of it.
Yep.
It's all right, well, there's something there because everybody. This stereotype is oh, you take too many years off, you're done as a lifter. It's they're definitely still in the sport and kicking ass. So
yep.
I think that's probably a good study on those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably.
Yeah, and to go back to that correction of skill technique, so and I'll use golf as an example where I went through swing changes in 2014. Now, mind you, this is 10 years ago now. And essentially those swings changes, one of the aims of the swing change from the coach was, hey, eventually what I expect with the swing change is that you're going to be able to draw the ball. So drawing the ball is basically going from right to left on a swing, basically that's the ball shape that you find. So 10 years later, I can tell you that about 4 years ago, I'm drawing the ball. And of course, now is the issue of I set up for a draw and it goes straight because it's golf.
Yeah.
But I know my body can make that movement to cause that effect. And so those swing changes actually took, like I'm saying, it was a good 6-7 years before they first appeared because living in Michigan, we're not getting golf year round.
No.
So my getting to those 1,000 repetitions that are good repetitions
stagnated a little bit.
Yep, just take longer. So
yeah. So we basically, just to go back for those of you that maybe got caught up there, we have the 3 stages, right? We have cognitive, associative, and then autonomous. And then like stepping back when it comes to like coaching those, would you agree like in those stages we see like when it comes to cognitive is like you're thinking about what you're doing a lot. Sometimes even to the degree of overthinking.
Yes.
Which sometimes even causes more issues. We have like a specific learning window, right? We've talked about that before, like 15 to 20 minutes for like new skills, and then you burn out. So people tend, especially adults, they tend to get like obsessive, and then they try to like practice for an hour. It's like, no, you've actually ceased learning. And then that's also the phase where I see a lot of times people get really stressed where they're not learning it fast enough. Is in that phase, and it's like, no, it takes a while. Like in that cognitive phase, it's like you've never done this before.
Yeah,
Like,
and even longer. It's actually
yeah,
that intermediate, that associative stage. It's the longest phase of all three in
yep,
terms of the progression. So, but it is right on target with what you're saying. And that's again because we are in the immediate reward generation and time frame of the world. People get frustrated. The worst part about it is when they drop either the sport or drop doing the skill because they just got tired of trying it and not being successful. But then we get into that's why they call me for the sports psych part though. So
yeah, yeah. Or they don't understand that it's an accumulation.
yeah, yeah.
Tonnage of repetition of sporting time, stuff like that. I think also one of the things that people have issues with, especially during that associative age, because that's like where a lot of weightlifters live their life, is like cueing from coaches and like coach feedback also starts to kind of like come down.
It is
A lot
supposed
of
to. It's supposed
yeah,
to.
exactly. And that is one thing, and I'm glad you said that because you can elaborate on that if you want. But like, I've known that, and I've had really high level coaches also discuss that. I've observed that from other high level coaches. Is like, yeah, it's supposed to come down. And the golden rule that I've learned is it's like it's 51-49. 51% of athletics is on the athlete at the end of the day. After the beginner phase,
Yes.
51% is on the athlete. They have to learn, they have to feel, they have to think. The coach is 49%. We're there to engage, we're there to correct, we're there to encourage. And the higher skill they get, we're really there to just keep them safe from themselves, spot really high level things maybe they're not thinking of anymore because they should be learning, and then just plan for them for long-term development. And like I think a lot of times athletes in all sports, not just weightlifting, but in all sports, they get kind of discouraged because they don't have that like big feedback loop of consistent coaching of like every rep or every shot on goal of like coach being like, great shot, good shot, more to the left, more to the right, pull harder. And it's like, no, you should be feeling these things now.
Yes.
You should be thinking actively of these things. That's how your body and your brain make this connection for you to learn.
I know. It's and if you were to ask me, I'd say once you're in that advanced stage, we really should be talking about 75% athlete, 25% coach. Like you said, to keep them safe from themselves, to make sure they're in the right track, and then tweak. Because we're talking about refining at that point.
Yep.
To increase the efficiency of the movement, which is the ultimate goal, of course. So yeah, absolutely. All of that really gets into I like what you said there at the end. You're supposed to feel that. I don't have to qualify it for you. You're supposed to feel that, because if you have that, if you have a strong motor memory to the actual movement, then your body's giving you feedback, and
Exactly.
that's the most important feedback is, did it feel right to you when you did that movement? If it didn't, process. What's the reflection to what happened, and how is it that you correct it? I'm at that point in golf most of the time now where I already know if my ball goes, crazy left, I always say, thank you, baseball, because I just batted down the third base line. and baseball was earlier than golf for me. So even though the two skills are similar but not similar, every now and then golf still gets in. I mean, baseball still gets in the way of the golf swing. And
You're gonna get me in trouble, man. I like tried to sneak off. I started golfing again like 2 years ago, a year
Okay.
ago. I was gonna sneak off and go golf with my neighbor, my like neighbor boss to my business, and my wife will kill me if I go play without her. And I'm gonna go do that again. I'm gonna go walk that thin line, and I'm gonna potentially go do it after this, and she will murder me, and it's gonna be your fault.
well, yeah,
She's like at her work right now, working her ass off, and I'm gonna go golf.
well,
It's
but
Cologne's fault.
yeah, you can blame me. I can always take the blame, and my shoulders and my back can handle that. So I'm okay with that. But what I definitely know is, goodness, the investment of time to golf really impacts you being a dad, especially when you're at a time when you have to be around with the kids or for the kids. Not to mention, that relationship with your spouse, because golf is not like I'm just going to go to the gym. I'll be back in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
If you do 9 holes, you're at least talking 3 hours. Between getting back and forth. So, but
Yeah,
it,
the
it
problem
is
is Amanda's extremely competitive, so
okay.
it turns into like a bloodbath. I'm not even being competitive, and somehow she's taunting me, threatening me if I beat her. Like it's.
Oh goodness. That's a good in-home
She's an
competition.
aggressive sportswoman. So,
Okay, I got that.
so heading down like the fabled muscle memory, muscle motor pathway, stuff like that. Let's give like a brief sprinkle to the audience. Neurons, dendrites. Let's do it. Let's get into there, man. Somebody puts a bar in their hand, and they go ground to overhead.
Yeah.
What's firing, man? What are they doing?
So the first thing that's taking place here is actually so let's just say, what's the stimulus? What's the task? So the task is to raise the bar over your head. And let's just say that we're just going to do a shoulder press, for example. All right. And in doing so, the brain now is receiving information from essentially all of our senses in order to now process the information for what the task requirements are all about. Once all of the task requirements have been figured out by the brain, they have self-organized all the different variables to connect to one movement, in this case, a shoulder press, then the brain basically sends down, we'll call this the motor program. It'll send it down to the muscles, and if I'm going to get into the specifics, which is what you just asked me, we then have to start talking about the alpha and gamma motor neurons, essentially. Okay, so the alpha motor neurons basically are going to carry down the entire motor program. In other words, the entire movement technique that's going to deal with aspects of doing a shoulder press. But the gamma motor neurons are basically going to bring in the specifics of what you have to do to the muscle fibers. So to put it in a broader sense, alpha motor neuron comes down from the brain through the spinal cord. And then at the spinal cord level, we have basically a relay station of neurons. And that relay station of neurons is going to then pass the information to the gamma motor neurons. And now the gamma motor neurons are basically going to execute the specifics of that particular movement that were in the motor program itself. So the entire motor movement pattern. And included in that is going to included in the gamma motor neurons is how much weight are you lifting, which indicates how much motor unit recruitment needs to take place. In other words, how many muscle fibers need to be recruited in order to be able to lift X amount. If you're in a warm-up set and you may be only just doing the bar, you know what? Your gamma motor neurons already know, hey, that bar is 45 pounds. I just got to work on my technique, make sure that my movement is stable across the board. I have parity on my grasp. That's it. The moment we start putting in a higher weight, that's when the increase of gamma motor neuron information is going to be passed to the muscle fibers. Once that gets to the muscles, then the muscles go into action. That action now is going to complete the movement. After the completion of the movement, though, it's where your proprioception system or proprioceptive system that's giving you your muscle feedback on the movement, it's going to compare it to your blueprint of shoulder press. You've already know the technique. So in the conversation right now, we're saying you already know the technique. Once you actually compare the movement that you just did to the blueprint of the shoulder press, immediately you should know, I did it correctly, or I was a little unbalanced, for example. I need to make sure I drive more with my left side to make sure it's even with my right, as opposed to being a little bit tilted. So that loop actually is continuous. And even though, the literature would tell you that that is a slow loop, in other words, we have time to think about it, what I say is this is actually happening in fractions of a second, especially if you have past experience with the movement, where the comparison of the movement that you just did to the blueprint can make the correction right away. I take a free throw. One of my common mistakes in taking a free throw is that I don't involve enough a lower body. So in other words, instead of having a nice, smooth force production coming in from the ground, which for any skill that we do, this is something else that people don't understand. Force starts at your feet.
No way.
No, really, right? So,
bro, I'm legit. Like, there is a high school athlete coming in on Monday that's like he throws like a 50. He needs a 54 to like get the state record for like a shot put or some shit. And his coach is like, I don't think he uses his legs. And I'm like, how the fuck is he throwing like that?
Right.
And she's like, yeah, I want you to do like these hang snatches with him and see if he's using his legs. Because I don't think he is at all. Like, how the fuck is he doing that with no legs then?
Especially
we're going to see what happens if we actually use our legs.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, so, but in taking that free throw, as soon as I miss it and I realized that it was more of a upper body arm motion that just took place, on my second attempt, I already know. I just went on how, that didn't feel right. And so I do actually the correction in between the time the ref actually throws me the ball for the second free throw. And something that I do is I never stay at the free throw line. I go back up to the top of the key on the basketball court. And, sometimes the ref is waving me in. I'm just saying, yeah, you throw me the ball and then I'm going to get to the free throw line, essentially. Just throw the ball and I'll get there to start my sequence. But I also use those, 10 seconds, 15 seconds to re-engage on what my correction is.
Yeah.
Sending it down. Hey, don't forget, full, steady, smooth motion from the ground up. So that is something that you're right. At times, people just don't process enough. And then, so something that I get, oh my goodness, it just drives me crazy. You just did an incorrect movement, no time to process, and you go and do it again. Like Bingo. Within, you just finish one, you don't process what you did, and you go do it again, and then you do it the same way. Well, yeah, that's what you just told your body to do.
It's because they're doing check-in-the-box fitness.
Yeah.
That's so, they're accomplishing a task more than doing the task.
Yes. And so, again, here I'm going to go with a golf example again, but you can apply this to any sport.
That is me playing golf, by the way. I'm not going to fully get the ball, you big dumb infantryman. And that's me.
No, trust me. I've had I had some regressions on golf, and I've had my friends are like, "Hey, G, you're an athlete. Can you just hit the freaking ball and stop thinking?" Stop
Yeah.
thinking. That's the crazy part. But, so you go to the range and you see somebody just hitting ball after ball after ball after ball after ball with no break in between each practice trial that they do
Yep.
at the range. So how are you supposed to correct what you're doing wrong if you're not processing? And then again, if you don't know what you're doing wrong, you're just going to keep hitting the ball because you don't know what you're doing wrong. You don't have no coaching. So, and that happens a lot at the range because there's so many beginners out there. They don't know what they're doing. So,
Yeah.
but again, you're in a position where you can put that level of instruction out there, and sometimes they still want to revert back to old ways. Something else that I say is like, do you really think about what you're going to do in practice, or do you just show up?
Yep.
Turn the switch on. I'm going to lift now.
Yeah.
Without processing that. So all of it is it's really a strong connection as to how our brain is really processing movement information in order to get to a good movement technique, but without reflection, without corrections, without time to practice. It just doesn't happen overnight. So once again, we get back to, if there's no resiliency, if there's no persistence, we're either going to have somebody dropping the sport or dropping the skill, or getting so frustrated that they really then don't even try to do it correctly, and they just keep doing it the same way. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think to kind of close out on that is like one of the things I learned when I was like competing with it was like when I was competing with CrossFit, but when I was also training for like SF schools, like when I would mess something up or I was just like really exhausted, I knew I was just too tired to be thinking clearly, is I would like step back and I would take 3 big breaths and then I would go into the next thing. So like pull-ups. Like pull-ups were a big part of the PT test. And I would like, guys would sit there and they would just like jump, try to do a pull-up, be smoked, drop, then jump again, try another one. And like, I would do a pull-up, step back, 1, 2, 3 breaths, step in, do another one, step back. And if I knew it wasn't happening in 3, I'd take it to 4 breaths. And like, I do that now in like my repetitions now. Like if I have a triple, I'll set the bar down and I'll take 3 breaths, then I'll set the second one down, then I'll step back and I'll take 5 breaths and I'll do the third one. But like, it gives me enough time to like re-engage with what I'm doing. So I'm actively engaged with the movement, like accelerate that. Come on, speed past the knees, keep it tight, whatever like I'm focused on. And like you were saying, I think a lot of people are just like, get 3 done. It's like, no. There's so much more that needs to be going on there for you to actually get something out of your training. So, and that's like with any sport, it's like, and a military analogy is like anybody can sit there and pull the trigger 30 times as fast as they can to put bullets down range, but are you hitting the target?
Right. Yeah.
This doesn't mean anything. You're just out of rounds.
Yeah. But that's exactly it, because that's another practice repetition skill, which requires quite a bit of integration of brain perception and putting those perceptual abilities into action to really be able to make decisions as to where do you have to aim, how much am I supposed, how hard am I supposed to pull that trigger, et cetera. So, and that's, a little bit of the nuances of shooting that you have way more experience than me, even though I'm registered.
Yeah. So before we head into end game, let's kind of take advantage of that sports psych side of you. So we have athlete A that's playing whatever sport, for the podcast, whatever, we'll do lifting, but like, they are kind of mid-level, been doing it a year or 2, and like things have just been frustrating for them. They've been coming in 3 times a week, they've been training, but they're like still not getting certain skills. They just feel like they can't put it all together. They swear they're listening to coach. They swear they're paying attention, but like they're just not putting the movement together. It's still frustrating. They're still having the same issue. Like we see a lot of this, like with the more complex movements, the snatch, the split jerk, like lots of complexity to it. I obviously have my input. Like, what is your input to that athlete as like sports psych side that you're going to give them to like help them learn that movement or either piece it apart?
So I will respond in a dual capacity, coach to sports psych as well. And one of my first indications when I see that a complex movement is not being put together correctly, or there are some faults in the process of completing that movement that is complex, I want to break it down right away. Break it down to the individual parts as long as the skill allows it to do that, of course, because of the fact that it may just be that little piece in the middle of the movement that's just a little bit off in the coordination aspect of it. And to me, when you break it down, then you can isolate that correction. Of course, we're going to get into the issue that the athlete may actually still revert back to their movement pattern that's incorrect, because again, that's the one that's already been cemented. That's what the body already knows how to do. So that's where the reflection piece, that's where the imagery session or visualization needs to come in. I am a high proponent of combining the kinesthetic or the physical movement with the visualization, because it allows for the athlete to be able to see it. So I would also, I highly encourage, please see yourself doing the movement correctly and incorrectly. This is what you're doing incorrect. This is why your body is getting into this position and is supposed to be in this position. So, so all the tools that we have now with technology, iCoach, etc., where you can put vectors and actually have the athlete, which for weight training is actually fantastic, by the way. Mm-hmm. So hey, so I have a couple of students that have never squatted before, and they started squatting in the weight training class this semester. And some of them are tucking their chin, into their chest while they're squatting. And I'm always like, bring that baby up, bring that chin up. Yeah. And then the other piece that I want to, I use my hands and I say, this is where you should be as far as your upper body back, almost a 45-degree angle when you get down with your glutes basically pushing out because of your hips. That's the movement. You're staying here. Mm-hmm. You're coming into a chair. Essentially, you're doing a chair squat. Let's just put it that way. So all of those corrections, when I put them together, I try to bring in as much information that the athlete can process. And then ultimately, I always tell the athlete, you need to think about what you're doing in corrections, for sure, and you start to visualize yourself doing it correctly, especially if you've had successful executions of the movement. If you hear, and I say this, if you hear a coach say, that's it, that's the movement, I always say, that's the muscle memory that you need to bring into. And I am saying muscle memory in that particular moment because you want to memorize how the muscles felt in that movement, and you just bring it together. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a combo from a teaching, coaching standpoint to the mental side of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be helpful for people that aren't already doing that. Yeah, man, God, there's just like, so much shit I could talk about. I find it fascinating. I was telling my wife today, I was like, you should let me go back to school. She's like, no, you will enjoy that too much, and not have an income. It's like right there. All right, well, we're gonna head over to our end game, and we're gonna do this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this ready. So, end game, like I said, we always like to do just kind of hang out, have some fun. Your end game, we're going to go ahead and get your opinions on skills and sports, all right? So skills and sports, some of these are what we would deem actual sports. Some are sports that the human race has made into sports. So as you can tell, some of these are going to be some interesting ones. But, we want you to stack the activities of sports based on their varying degree of complexity. Please give your professional opinion on some of these, whether you feel that they are actually like highly advanced or they are not, or whether they get ridiculed. I know some of them do get ridiculed as maybe not sports. That was, I think, one of my favorite debates we had in your class.
Oh.
I'm actually podcasting with one of the youngest IndyCar racers to get into the circuit here soon.
Yep. That was a juicy one too.
Yeah. I'll be podcasting with him. I'm actually really excited. I met him on a plane heading out to Colorado, and just listening to like how they train, physically, and then just like psychological training for what they're doing, and just like the whole process of being an IndyCar racer is just crazy. So it's pretty interesting.
All right.
But anyways, without further ado,
let's get into it because I got to get moving over here.
Yeah, so we got some sports over here. We'll start from the bottom.
Okay, time out. When you say polo at the top, is that water polo or is it?
No, we're talking polo with like horses.
The polo with the horses. Okay, I wanted to make sure because you've mentioned it a couple times. I see you got water polo there, so we're good.
So I'm gonna go to this view so I can move these a little bit, and this will be easier for me to do that. There we go. All right, so go in here. Where do you put polo?
So if I'm going to actually go into polo, there's so many requirements there because we got to start first that you and the horse have to be one. So there's got to be quite a bit of skill connected to horse riding and horse compatibility. And then you're actually having to bring in quite a bit of eye-to-hand coordination with the stick to as well as being able to hit that ball, how your body has to move sideways to be able to do that. And I know that they're not only just sometimes hitting forward, but sometimes they're either going sideways or backwards to be able to connect with teammates. So I would put that definitely on a high level of complexity for sure. And just to clarify to the audience, anytime that you're manipulating an object, it increases complexity. So
where are we going? Elite or advanced?
I'm going elite because of the horse combination that comes in. So you got to control the horse, plus you got to control the pole stake to go with it.
Yeah, I think polo is the hardest sport in the world.
Okay.
Because I do. So there's one sport which I'll disclose at the end, which is the scariest sport in the world to me.
Okay.
And I'm an infantryman that used to jump out of airplanes.
Okay.
And I'll disclose that at the end. But polo's insane. You have other human beings and horses that literally we used to use like in warfare to run over people.
Yes. Yes.
A lot going on there. All right, let's do figure skating. What do we got? Where are we putting it?
Figure skating. So you're not manipulating an object. Let's start with that. So that decreases complexity right away, and you certainly have to.
People are gonna get so bitter over that. I love it.
What was that?
People get so bitter over that. When I say shit like that in like the gym, they get so fucking triggered. When I say that, I'm like, it's not that advanced. They're like, what do you mean? Like, it's not. You're not manipulating the object.
You're basically having to control your body movement on skates. Now, that does puts it in immediately for me once you have gotten to expertise level at an advanced level of performance and skill as a sport, no doubt.
All right, advanced. Okay, chicken.
Now, parentheses, to get to the Olympics, you have to be elite.
Yes.
Okay.
That is in all things.
Okay, all right.
Fighting, the old school, sitting on someone's shoulder inside of the pool, fighting. This is a sport that is recognized. And
are you serious? It really is.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Where are we putting that?
Oh
can you deem that person as an object you have to manipulate?
It's I have to pull that in the and just the skill requirement of being able to be strong, basically, to be able to hold another human being, and then the person that's being carried, being able to, again, just have enough strength to be able to try to topple the other individual that they're going against. So it is a low skill by all means in terms of, I wouldn't say no skill, because you still have to manipulate another individual to submission, right? So there is that, but skill requirements definitely low.
All right. Water polo.
Oh boy! So I'm glad you bring that. I'm glad that we made the distinction between the two. Definitely advance for sure.
All right.
Because of the fact that not only do you have to move yourself through the water, so you're dealing with the swimming requirements, and you also have to manipulate the ball and essentially avoid opponents. I don't know if have you ever tried it? Have you ever tried to do water polo? Have you tried?
Not like in a formal game. I've played with like my friends in a pool. We basically just beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, I mean, my only even though I have very close friends that were water polo, but water polo players. We did it in a PE class in high school, and I remember it was just the most tired PE class I've ever had.
I was going to say, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. So,
axe throwing.
All right, so axe throwing. I'm going to put that in the skill requirement section there. Okay. You basically are manipulating that object, but there's not a lot of movement that's taking place other than, you do have to configure perceptually hitting the target, essentially. And then, once you have the movement of throwing the axe, that becomes, all you're worried about is, are you making the right decisions perceptually to hit the target? So,
okay, football.
Oh boy. Now you're really putting me in an interesting situation here, but I'm going to go advance with that, primarily because you have to try to dominate another individual. Within the scope of what you're doing. You also, if you're on the offensive side, obviously you have to be working with, catching the ball, running the ball, and that again, you're controlling an object again. So that puts me more advanced in the movements themselves. So.
Marathon running.
Oh goodness, no skill. You just gotta have endurance and be able to run, and your running form does not have to be efficient at all. So,
beer pong.
Oh, how much beer are we drinking though? That's the problem. That's where the motor function gets affected. So, I would put it on the skill requirement as well. It's a very simple.
You heard it here first, folks. Beer pong, more athletic.
Yeah, it's yeah. Oh, discus. Yeah, discus. Advance because of the twisting that you got to do in the pivoting aspect of the movement that requires quite a bit of velocity actually, and then you got to bring in quite a bit of control with the discus itself. If you're throwing rugby, I'm putting it right there with football.
Rugby, that's what I assumed. Limbo racing.
Ooh, so like
this
limbo,
is insane, by the way. So limbo racing is like they're on roller skates.
Oh, okay.
And they like go under limbo poles in a race format, like down a street.
Yeah, I have not seen that one before, but that's
a YouTube search.
Man, oh wow, are they going at a high speed?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty. I mean, I'm not doing it.
No, yeah. I mean, hey, I have problems just bending just to.
We're talking like it's like full leg split out type limbo.
Oh,
like split to get that low. It's pretty wild.
Wow. All right, so you are manipulating the skates. So you do have an object that you need to manipulate from the scope of that. Plus, you then have to manipulate your body. Definitely advance. And that could. More advanced. I wouldn't put it at that elite level for sure. So,
okay, surfing.
Surfing. I'm biased, obviously, on that a little bit. And the ocean conditions quite a bit take a toll on what you're going to do. So you have to be very dynamic and But I would put that in the continuum of advanced to elite for sure, just to be able to get into the actual movement itself. So,
Okay. Tough mutters.
ooh, man. Well, you're basically running and you may be like jumping over logs or something like that, or you may go through an obstacle course. So we're talking again about just having endurance. Yeah, I'm going to go down there with the marathoners as well.
Golf.
Yeah, all right. So
You're most biased.
yeah, so definitely bias here, but the three most difficult skills to perform.
Here we go.
All right, the three most difficult skills to perform.
I've officially given him a soapbox. I mailed it to him, by the way. Everyone.
Yep, big time. But number one is hitting a fast pitch baseball. Number two is hitting a fast pitch softball. Number three is actually hitting a golf ball. And I'm going to use the fancy term, the synergy of muscle groups that needs to come together in order to be able to perform the skill of hitting a golf ball. It's actually quite high. So again, I'm starting to side a little bit with the polo of how much body control needs to take place while coordinating, having eye to hand coordination as well. So we'll put it at elite.
All right. NASCAR.
Man, all the requirements for NASCAR, we had this conversation. So I'm going to go elite at the speed that they're driving to be able to coordinate the car and their movements, as well as the duration of the event. It's very high. So.
Okay, so which one?
I go elite with NASCAR.
Elite.
Yep.
All right. People are gonna have a tizzy over that one. Man.
Yeah. Well, I can understand. Where I stood on that earlier in the conversation. So
people are gonna be pissed. Quidditch. College prof.
Yes, that's crazy that I'm seeing that and I've seen it actually, so I know. I'm gonna put that on skill requirements.
There we go. Yeah,
skill requirements.
Harry Potter fans will rejoice.
Yep.
Skateboarding.
Advanced, especially with the stuff that the kids are doing these days.
There we go. Toe wrestling.
Oh, let's bring it to no skill, please. It's just against
volleyball.
Volleyball, I'm going to put that. Boy, there's quite a bit that goes on there. But I definitely would think that I would put it on the advanced level with all the requirements. And then I'm glad that you're saving the last one for last,
Olympic
right? So if we already have the skill requires for Olympic lifting, all we're talking about is just motor unit recruitment. So keep that as skill requirements right there.
Okay, now I'm going to say something that people get really pissed off. I joke all the time, and I joke. People think I'm joking,
right?
But I actually say, weightlifting isn't that hard.
It isn't,
and it fucking infuriates people.
I don't even.
It didn't.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. If you're trying to go to the Olympics, trying to be the best in the world, fuck yeah, it's hard. But
complexity and difficulty, it's not the same.
Yes, So when I talk at the gym, and I'm like, it's not that hard when we're talking about as a sport. It's not that hard, and people get really pissed off at me.
It's
just not when you look at it from a scientific definition.
No, man, once you
recruitment and stuff,
once you get through cementing the technique, you can give me the most complex Olympic weightlifting event that you got. And I'm still going to tell you the same thing. It's just not that hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
It's just not that hard. It really isn't.
It's hard in terms of stress.
Yes, yes.
So are other sports,
yes.
But so when it comes to just the rules of neurological stuff and motor recruitment and stuff like that,
it actually equates to a simple movement. I hate to say that for some people, but it becomes a simple movement in the big picture.
I'll put a warning in the podcast. Everyone needs to stop listening at 1 hour and 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So they're not upset.
All right. Okay.
What is the hardest sport?
Sport or skill? It's two separate things.
Out of what we were just doing. So the hardest I guess, skill for a sport?
Hardest thing to do that requires the most skill and the most athleticism is MMA and boxing.
There you go. There you go.
That's by far in terms of what the research community is going to tell you, the scope of evading, getting hit, the speed and ability and agility that you need. In terms of the most athleticism needed for a sport, it is actually MMA and boxing, basically. So, and it's pretty easy to quantify that in the big picture.
I think that's a gimme.
Yeah. So, all right.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want to talk to you, ask you questions, input, take your classes? I don't know, man.
Let's just for the moment, let's just say you can reach me through the Eastern Michigan website. By the way, the name is misspelled there. My name is spelled correctly.
We discovered that.
The website has it incorrect, but it's also gcolon at emish.edu. So GCOLON at EMICH.edu. And you can certainly reference the podcast, and you want to connect with me, and then from there we can move forward.
Are you on the gram?
I am actually. Yep, I am.
What's your gram? Give out your handle.
It's just Geffrey Colon.
All right.
Very simple. I didn't mask it or anything. So
you don't have like a basketball nickname.
No. I just kept it simple. It's if you and I'm basically not an active, high involved social media person. So I'm there. You can find me there. So.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this. So.
All right. No problem.
Appreciate it. All of you, thank you. If you guys like this episode, please share it. Please subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Bye.